had your Google screen up and you were also sharing, so it did that infinite mirror thing. So if once you close out of there and actually show your images, it should be fine.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Tusar has been selected randomly as our presenter for the very, very first Ladies Be Architects mock review board. So I'm going to mute myself and hand over to Tusar and wish him all the very best of luck. I've got my egg timer here. So when it goes off, you've got to stop. So you get 30 minutes to present. And I will just go on mute. Thank you very much. Off you go.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I hope you guys have my slides or the graphics which I created for the scenario. So the scenario is about Jamunda Water, and they are trying to transform their IT program. They have quite a few legacy systems. They do not have a CRM platform in general. So they're trying to build a good CRM platform with a nice UI so that their internal as well as external users can consume the platform and do and execute critical business processes. So as I look at the story on the slide deck 1, that's where I noted down the actors. So I see internal users who are primarily the ones who are going to support external users, customers who are of two types. One of the category of customers are residential, who are 5 million, and that's, I think, that is the current volume. And then they have business customers, which are around 500K at this point. They also do interact with wastewater operators who are primarily to manage the waste water, and they do interact with Jamunda water managers to clean the water, and then they do send some kind of bills which gets billed to the actual customers. So based on the other key core functionality around the entire business process is around managing the service request complaints. So that is a key functionality. So based on that, I'm recommending the internal users should be using Service Cloud as a choice, as their platform. The residential customers and business customers, I'm recommending to use Community Plus because they would be using service request heavily. Wastewater operators, I'm recommending for them Partner Community because again they are going to use a case, and they have a management structure where we have to build the role. Key entities here are going to be accounts, which are primarily going to take care of person accounts for residential customers and business accounts for customers. Case will be used heavily for managing service requests and complaints as part of the core business processes. Then we have to create few custom entities which would take care of business processes. Key custom objects would be water usage, water management program, billing accounts, and there are a few which we are going to talk when we talk about the data model. Now going back to system landscape, which is slide 2 or the graphics 2. So the core of the landscape is going to be Salesforce Service Cloud with Customer Community Plus and Partner Community as add-ons for external users. For authentication, Salesforce users would be using LDAP, so that would force us to use delegated authentication.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you show us your screen with your diagrams, please?
How do I so?
Just hit present now.
Go ahead and pause the timer while he's doing that.
Sorry.
Yeah, bottom right corner.
Yep. If you hover over,
Everybody see?
if you hover over the Google Hangouts window at the bottom, on the bottom right, there you go.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yep. Great. All right. Now switch over to your slides.
Yeah, great to see this infinite.
Yeah, the infinite mirror.
Any luck? Or I see a bunch of.
Yep.
That's perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah, you can minimize Google if you want, if you don't want to see that,
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
or maximize your slides.
This
Either way.
is the system landscape. So what you're
Okay,
presenting here is.
Go ahead and start the timer again.
Yeah, so the core is the Salesforce with community, customer community plus and partner community. The Salesforce internal users are going to use LDAP. That is what is being suggested in the case. So for that, we are going to use the delegated authentication, and we are going to get the WSDL from the LDAP, and that's how we are going to consume for creating new users as well as authenticating the users through the service. Other key system here is the waste management tool. So it has two components. One is the UI, and there is an engine which calculates the billing and the core financial of the company. So as part of this case, we plan to move that UI from waste manager tool to Salesforce, and keep the engine, because that is what the case is requiring us to do, because the calculation needs to happen there, and that would be interfaced through SOAP APIs. So that's why we are recommending to have a ESB, which would mediate and help us interact with Salesforce, between Salesforce and the waste management engine. Second one is they have a water management ERP, which they want to keep it. And there is a data migration requirement where right now they have billing accounts, and that account has been denormalized, and a lot of attributes on that billing account. So based on our data model, we might have to transform that to split into accounts and billing accounts. So for that, we are proposing recommending a ETL solution where we are going to take those records, map to our target state data model, transform that data, and put into Salesforce. Other key system is the billing system, which is going to remain as is, and there would be some REST APIs which would be used to interact or interface between the billing system as well as Salesforce. Authentication for external systems. So they need to be authenticated through Facebook. So we are going to propose a Salesforce service provider initiated single sign-on flow where Facebook would be configured as an authentication provider, and the users would have a choice to select Facebook for authentication, and they would go through the single sign-on flow. The other requirement is around having a payment gateway. So for that, we are recommending to use App Exchange product, interfacing with Salesforce, both internal and external users who are going to put their credit card pay based on the current invoice, and that would interface with Salesforce as well as the billing system and the water ERP through the invoice entity which is there. So there would be some services which need to be written for this interaction. Okay. Next, we would move to the data model. So the data model, so the key here is the customers, and there are residential customers where the volume is almost 10 million. So 5 million around, and then there are business customers who are in the range of 500K. So we are just projecting over a period of few years, it might cross 10 million. And based on that, for the residential customers, we plan to use personal accounts, and for the business customers, we plan to use accounts. And based on the visibility requirements for the company, we want to make it private. And the key entities here are billing accounts. So that's where the financial information is there for each account. So that will be and the visibility requirement states that the user should be able to see billing or see billing accounts if they have access to accounts. So based on that, the relationship for billing accounts will be master detail with visibility driven by the parent. Contact, we want to use the out-of-the-box feature or we use the lookup, and the visibility will be driven by the parent. The other key components are waste management program. So this is again a entity where we are going to store key customers who satisfy a specific criteria based on the business needs. So that visibility again will be driven by accounts visibility. And the other thing, the way the one customer gets into water management program is driven by how much water they're using. So there is another entity called water usage. That's where we are going to track how the water is used, or how much the water is used per customer. So that would be the place to track water usage, and that would drive in some cases, drive what gets into water management program object. That is one. Then there is another requirement around driving visibility for water management program. So the requirement here is the manager or whoever is managing the account, and if he wants to give access to some other manager for the water management program, they should be able to they should have a placeholder where they can say, okay, this program should be accessible to this user for a specific date, right? So the idea here is to have a configurable entity where the manager can put who can see the water management program till some effective date, and based on that we can drive some apex sharing rule to expand the visibility. So that's going to be a temporary configurable entity to manage visibility. The other key entity here is the case, which is going to take care of all the requests, incoming complaints, service requests. So that would have a lookup to account, and the object would be private. And depending on the business needs, there would be some sharing rules to drive the visibility of case. The other for the wastewater management, they do track sites. So the site would be a placeholder. It would be one-to-one with the account. And we can relate to account, and that's where they are going to track their wastewater overhaul, or how they are doing per site. That's where they're going to track through that one-to-many object. So this is the model we are recommending for the company to move forward with. Next, we are going to talk about the role hierarchy. and some of the sharing and people who's the key player in this implementation, and the key subordinates for him are going to be the city leads. There are 3 cities they are covering, and we are going to have a lead role for each. And under that lead, we have customer managers who are going to report to him. So this is one leaf of the hierarchy. And on the right side, we have the waste water management leaf. We do not have any hierarchy, but so they can work in parallel with VP service, and who in both of them would report to a CEO or the head of the company or the sales operations, who are going to manage and oversee the entire operations. Key sharing considerations, as I said, is there are a lot of visibility requirements, and definitely account needs to be private to help us manage all the visibility and sharing requirements. So the owner, definitely the key customer manager, they are going to own some of the customers in the city, and that would roll up to the test lead, the city lead, which would take care of the service teams, VP service. Waste management program, this again is a private object in the sense they wanted to drive this based on the account visibility. So that is going to be master detail with account, and the other object which is to drive some of the water management program object visibilities. So that is that object through which we are going to write some Apex sharing based on the data in that object. The next one is the billing account, which again is a key entity with a master detail relationship with the account. Okay. Next one, we are going to talk about the governance of the program and how we can deliver this based on all the constraints the customer has. So I could read that properly. So there is a UI, and other is the integration. Integration team has very hard requirements, or their release schedule is very tight in the sense they can release or make changes in 6 months, or they have some hard dates. But on the customer service side, the team is open to making changes. They are open to be agile, flexible. They want to see how things are, and they want to move faster. So for that team, we are recommending to go for agile methodology so that they can see and really start consuming some of the user interface or some of the front end based functionalities. So the proposal here is move forward with the core CRM, UI, business processes using agile methodology in next 3 to 6 months. Then engage your integration team, feed the data model and the core system architecture with the integration so that they align and deliver that in the 3 to 6 months after that. Or the idea is to give them be transparent and give them more whatever they need to align with their dates, right? So that way we can deliver the UI and the core CRM features, and then have the integration as soon as that team is ready to deliver. Environment wise, we have a distributed environment team. There are few at on-site, few at offshore, multiple developers. So the proposal here is to use a source control so that we are effective in terms of what we deliver, and have the continuous integration on top of that. So the environment landscape proposed here is the developer should have their own development environment. We can have integrated development to take the code from each environment, each developer, make sure their code is working as a team, or the code works as an integrated code base. and the CI server in between can help us to push that code without having a dedicated manager or a release manager managing all those items. Once that is tested, we can move to test environment, which would that's where the functional team and the QA team can test. And if that is successful, we can move to production environment. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Time check.
I think we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay. Let's add that to Q&A.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So let me start off. First question. You had mentioned LDAP and using delegate authentication and WSDL. Can you explain that whole solution again? How that would work?
Yeah. So the LDAP is something which the internal team they use the LDAP to manage the authentication for the Active Directory, and so they can provide a WSDL, which in the Salesforce we enable the delegated authentication through Salesforce, and once we enable that, we can on the registration handler we can write some code to consume the WSDL.
What's needed? What's needed for delegated authentication?
Yeah. So first we have to enable the delegated authentication in Salesforce.
And how do you do that?
Yeah. For that, we have to call Salesforce to enable it.
Okay.
And
so then what?
Sorry.
What is passed in delegated authentication? What does Salesforce require?
For which one? Can you repeat that again, please?
What does Salesforce require you to send your Salesforce org during delegated authentication? What is required? What's in the payload?
Yeah, you have yeah, the username and yeah, I think the username which you are going to identify the user, and if you have any enterprise specific attribute on the user which you can map between in Salesforce as well as your LDAP. So that would be the key to manage who the user is. So those will be your core entities. And in addition to that, if you have other attributes of the user, key attributes of user, which helps you to create users in Salesforce, and your last name, first name, email, and
those are all passed back to Salesforce.
Yes.
Delegated authentication. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on.
I have a question. So you mentioned that there is person accounts that you're planning to use
Right.
for the personal customers. Can you explain? Could you explain to us why you've selected that and what are the pros and cons of that particular strategy?
Right. So this is this is a bit. They are looking at the business case. It's a business to customer use case where the company is trying to sell directly to individuals who are the residential customers. So based on to align with that business model, I choose person account because that aligns with the business B2C model. On the con side, yes, person account is going to create an account and contact that might take some space in your storage. But again, because it aligns with the business process, that's why the person account was chosen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You had mentioned, can you go to your data model, please? And identify which objects, if any, are LDV.
Yeah, the account is definitely LDV because it has, I think, 5 million residential customers and around 500K business accounts. So it's close to 6 million, and I just put a growth of over a period of time. So the account is definitely LDV. Case, I think based on the case, I think based on the notes we received, I think the mentioned the accounts usually create 2 cases per year. So that can be an LDV as well.
Okay.
How about the business accounts? Sorry, billing accounts.
True. Yeah, billing accounts is yeah, you're right. Billing accounts on an average, depending on how many billing accounts they might have. Yeah, even if it is 1-to-1, that would be another LDV.
And how are we capturing the monthly site information, monthly billing information of the site under WMP?
So the water management program, that is you have the water uses. That's where we are going to capture for each account what is the monthly uses, right?
Yeah.
And
If you here, let me phrase it how you would get asked. If you go to under proposed business processes under waste management,
okay.
go to the 3rd bullet point. Can you read that bullet point and tell us how you solve for that?
You said okay.
The 3rd bullet point under waste management, the one that starts with wastewater operations are provided with an easy. Do you see that?
Just looking at okay, proposed business process. Then you're saying
Waste management.
waste management. Okay.
3rd bullet point.
Number 3 again. The wastewater operators provided with easy interface and okay. So hold and process in a bulk manner. These operators enter data site. Okay, so that's so that is the model for site and wastewater model. The wastewater is the place where we are going to capture that information for each site, and the fact that they wanted a good UI to enter all the everything at one place. So this would drive us to build a custom user interface, a single page app where we are going to give the users a Lightning component or a Visualforce based component where they can enter everything at one go, and on save or post, we are going to capture that in wastewater object or entity.
Okay, so these operators can access 30 sites a day. And data is entered daily batches per each site. Okay.
Right, yeah. And it also needs a API which they can use to interface. So that entity would help them to use through a data loader, or we can provide necessary services to load the data.
You're going to use data loader with an API?
Yeah, data loader is one option. Or we can give them enterprise wisdom if their IT team is, depending on the need of
okay,
how mature the IT team is, they can use this to interface with Salesforce.
Sounds good. Real quick, can we go back and hop over to your license definition, your first slide? Can you go over these again and explain to me why you chose the license? Let's start with residential customers.
Yeah, so the residential customers, they are going to use cases. They're going to create service requests for managing their complaints or managing any kind of
okay,
issues. So the case is they are going to use cases, and for that, Community Plus was recommended.
Do you need Community Plus for case access?
I believe so.
Are there any other license types that you considered?
Yeah, the other option was community. So I was not sure if community can give us the flexibility to use cases.
Okay. Do you know how many users the limits are on Community Plus users
I think it's 10 million.
for Customer Community Plus?
Yeah, I don't know the answer for that, honestly.
Okay. All right. Let's move on.
No worries. I have a question about the customers themselves. Sorry, the waste water management, which I've forgotten. Sorry.
So I have one question here. So can you go on page number 4? And first bullet point, it says that the key customer manager can delegate WMP visibility to another manager and specify the end date for the delegation, and system should remove the visibility. So how would you solve that requirement?
Yeah, so the idea here is to have a entity, right? The waste management program visibility object. So that's where a manager is going to say, for this waste management program record, I'm going to give this user access till this date, right? So that is going to be your configurable entity, and we can have a batch Apex which is going to read that entity every day, and based on the rules or based on the effective or the end date for that record, it's going to look for the water management program record and the user, and it's going to give access through the through the sharing object. If and if it gets past the end date, it's going to remove that sharing record.
Okay, I have a question about your external users in terms of this. So there's a requirement for your external users to be able to enter usage information. How would you make sure that that user can? So if this is a customer, sorry, how would you make sure that that user can access everything to do with their account through the community portal?
Yeah, so we can have some sharing sets on when you configure the community. We can define the sharing sets, and in that we can give the criteria of the cases created by, or the accounts created by or created by them equals to I mean, they being the owner of the contact. So the sharing set would help you to manage that.
So you're using a sharing set with Customer Community Plus users?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and how about internal users? So if you've got, you mentioned customers creating a case in order to ask a question. So how would you make sure that the internal users can see that case, considering that you've got a private sharing model?
Yeah, so that's where we think we have to use the sharing groups, and that's where whatever accounts the external users create, that gets visible to, and that's where we can define who in the internal user group can see. So that's the place where either we can manage the public group, or everybody under the highest role and subordinates, they get to see whatever the external users create.
Okay, thank you.
Can you go to page 3 under customer service? Let me know if that's on page 3 for you. You see that?
Yeah.
Customer service, the last major bullet point, so customers can do the following through the portal, and then the first 3 sub bullets. Can you read those and tell us how you solve for them?
You get past invoices and payments from the water ERP system. Yeah, so this can be achieved either through by using a direct access using Salesforce Connect through external object, so that we do not have to store the invoice and payment data. So that will be the approach. Click on a link to view a PDF copy past bills from ZE, okay, the billing system. So this again can be accessed through either a link on the customer page, which would give you direct access to the billing system.
The customers are going to have direct access to the ERP billing system?
If they have access to the account, they have to first get access to the account. And if they have access to the account, based on the ID or unique customer number, a call can be made through a OData service or Salesforce Connect to retrieve the data for the invoice and payments.
Okay, and the next bullet?
Click a link on to view copy past bills from ZE. Okay, so this is again depending on access to the customer. There can be we can store the links on the customer information as an attribute, which would open up the PDF as needed.
Where does that PDF live?
This should be in the billing system. We do not want to copy all the documents here.
Okay, so that link points to what?
Yeah, that would point to the GE, the billing system.
So you're opening up the billing system to the public?
Again, this is for a customer, as long as you have access to the account.
How does the billing system know what account the customer has access to?
So the customer would have access to only his account because he's the owner.
No, I know, but how does the billing system know? Because the PDF is served by the billing system. You're clicking on a link that's taking you to the file that is on the billing system, hosted internally behind the firewall. So at that point, they click on that link, the billing system has no concept of who the person clicking on the link is.
Right. So, yeah. So I think, one option would be to have the authentication mechanism here. When, as a user, as you are trying to access a link, you need to provide your authentication to the system. So that way, you get access to that system.
Okay. And then the next one?
Pay their bills securely using credit cards. So this is where we are proposing to have a credit card gateway app exchange system, a product if feasible, and the users are going to put their payment information, and then depending on the services we have available on the billing system, we are going to reflect that in that system, as well as in the water ERP system. Again, the key here would be the customer, and that customer would have a unique number, or a number which each of the systems can refer to. So that would be the key to create or reflect or create the transactions for the payments in the billing system, as well as reflect that against the invoice in the ERP system.
So can you talk to me how that would work? How would you build that?
Okay, so yeah, the first thing is you have to have a payment gateway, right, where you're going to enter your key attributes, key information for your invoice, which would include your credit card number and other attributes, which would be submitted to the gateway. And depending on the success, if that gets successful, you get a response saying that the payment has been successful. And if that is based on that, you make another call. You make, in this case, you have to make a couple of calls, in fact, because you have two systems. One is your billing system, another is water ERP. So to the billing system, you.
So how are you doing that? How are you making those
customer
calls?
number.
I've connected to the gateway. I've
Right.
paid my invoice with the gateway, right? So successful payment. What is sent back to Salesforce? How is Salesforce then processing that information to update the other systems? Or is that even being sent back to, what is happening? Can you tell me, like, point to point?
Right. So once it's successful, you definitely get a response with a success message, which is basically going to confirm that your payment has gone through, right?
Okay. So yeah, but okay. So that success message is going to what system?
The first you're going to get in Salesforce, because you're going to make the call from Salesforce.
Okay. So then what happens in Salesforce when it gets that success message?
Yes. So when you get the success message, you read that message or that attribute, and based on that, you make calls to two different systems.
Okay. And
What
you're
if those
calling.
systems
Sorry.
have different protocols? How are you managing that?
Which one?
You've got two different systems that have two different APIs. So how will you manage that?
Right. I think, again, depending on your if you're referring to it as a SOAP versus REST or any other interface.
Correct.
So again, depending on you get the message, right, and depending on that, you make different calls. If it is a REST call, then you, depending on what is needed on the one of the systems, one of the key attributes would be your customer number, invoice number. Those should be the input to the water ERP system, and how much and the amount, invoice amount, right? So that is kind of expected in terms of what service water ERP is going to expose to get this information. So we are going to submit that information, and once that is successful, we make another call to the billing system, depending on, again, if it's a SOAP-based API or the rest. We are going to either formulate that structure, SOAP versus REST, and submit accordingly.
Okay, and that would be completed in Salesforce? You would do that coding directly in Salesforce?
Yes, based on this recommendation, yes.
Okay.
Or any of these orchestrations handled by the ESB?
Yeah, that would be another. Yeah, if you have the ESP at your disposal, that can be used as well. Yeah, ESP can mediate that.
Which do you recommend?
If we have the ESP at the disposal, that would be the right place, because that can take care of all the service layer transformations and rules.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. On this particular slide, you said account is private, right? And on the case, it says all customers are viewable by the service center reps and their managers. So how do you give service reps to see all the accounts when this account is private?
The service reps, there are two. Okay, you said there are service reps, which might be another leaf on this role hierarchy. So if there are two options, right? One is all these reps we can put in a public group and have a sharing rule where we say get access to all the users in that public group for all the accounts. That's one way. Second way would be if we have a different leaf on the role hierarchy where they report to a sales operations, then we can manage through a sharing rule, giving access to that leaf's role and subordinates.
Okay. Sorry, just real quick on page 1 under project overview. The third paragraph, the last sentence, customers will need to access data using both custom branded web-based and mobile applications deployed on mobile app stores. How did you solve for that?
You're saying page 1, right? Page 1?
Yep. Page 1, project overview, third paragraph.
Right.
So customers will need to access. Is that your page 1? Project
Yeah,
overview?
on page 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Which paragraph?
Third, number 3.
Okay.
With the recent water prices. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, customers need access to using both custom branded, web-based. Okay. So that's part of the community build. We can put the necessary templates based on the required branding. And
Okay.
same for the mobile applications with the new mobile app or the new features we get on the mobile app, we can create necessary themes, and that would be the way to go forward.
Okay. So what mobile app are you recommending?
The Salesforce for iOS and Android.
Okay.
Yeah.
So custom built.
No, I think no. This is.
Salesforce 1. You said.
Salesforce 1.
Yeah, Salesforce. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the implications of deploying Salesforce 1 to a customer base?
Sorry, can you repeat that again, please?
Could you describe what the implications are of deploying Salesforce 1, the native Salesforce application that you've recommended? What's the impact of deploying that to the customer base, i.e. the public?
Right. So, one option would be to use a. I don't think that it's a good idea to go device management because this is a public site, public user base. So I think the approach would be to have the users download from the. No, I won't go for that. So yeah, I think most likely we have to have a public app store for the company, and we have the users or an app. I think there are places where the companies, they manage their own app catalog, which are exposed to the public, and the users can be instructed to download the mobile app from that store.
Okay, and what kind of app do you feel would be the most appropriate in order for users to be able to download it from the App Store?
I think the cases where you do not have any kind of authentication, any inbuilt authentication mechanism where you require them to use some of the enterprise specific authentication mechanism. And as long as it's okay to use the native authentication or login approach, that should be fine. If you want to tie that back to some enterprise standards, then that's not a good idea.
Could you tell us what type of mobile apps you could build in order to deploy this functionality to the public?
Yeah, I think, are you asking of what, yeah, you can have HTML5 based app or a hybrid app with native, with the hybrid app using your some of the core native features, as well as a wrapper using JavaScript, or the way the Salesforce one is, which is a hybrid app, right? So those are the two key directions you can take. And the other option would be to build a complete native app, which would have some integrations using mobile SDK if you want to use Salesforce data. So that would be the other approach.
So what would you recommend?
Again, depends on your scenario. So if you're asking about the public, are you asking about this specific scenario in this case, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Scenario.
Okay, so yeah, in this specific case, considering it's a public, website, right? And sorry, your customer base is across different devices. So I think the ideal recommendation would be to use HTML5. So that way you are not dependent on the devices to the extent so you're not in a situation where you are dependent and some of your functionalities do not work.
Since we're talking about the mobile, if you look at the access requirements on the page 2, second point, the customer, the last statement on the second point, the customer should not have to re-enter the credentials on the mobile application after authenticating. So how would you solve for this?
Yeah, if you're using the native Salesforce app, so on the Salesforce one, or the new Salesforce.
This is for customers. You just recommended an HTML5 app. How would you solve for this?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the one option may not be a secured option, right? You store store the credentials or your session ID in the browser, right? And for a time where, for a specific time period where you do not have to request the credentials or the authentication needs.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. So I'm going to ask about the customer service model. So we have, one of the requirements is that we have to be able to have inquiries and complaints routed to the right individual people. Can you tell us how you would solve that, please?
One option would be, depending on the service request segmentation or the categorization, depending on how we want to. The first we have to identify those attributes, right? And depending on that, we can put the users with specific skill sets in a queue, and we can have some rules where assignment rules where we say, if the service request is of this type, then assign to this queue of users.
Okay, and how would you resolve the issue of what would you do if even though the case is in the queue, what if nobody touches it? What would you do with that?
Yeah, we can write some notification rules, or if one thing would be, we can have some escalation rules where we say, if the case is not, or the case status is not updated during specific period of time, then a escalation notification can be sent to a specific group of users who would that would drive them to act on those.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the, I believe that brings us to the end for now. So okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That must have been hard.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I have to say, Gustavo was brilliant, actually, because I remember my CTA mentor was exactly the same way. And it's it's a consistency I'm seeing for every CTA who's volunteered to mentor me throughout this process. Everybody has used the same tone of voice, the same way of asking questions. So it's actually, I know it makes it really scary. It's pretty horrible.
Yeah, don't play poker against CTAs.
No. Gosh. But I think we can all agree, you know, I think you got a really good experience from Gustavo then.
Sure. Thank you, Gustavo. I think we met last month, I guess, in the CTA workshop. So thank you for.
Yeah. I believe we did that. Yeah, that's right.
So guys, you know, I'd like to see if we can offer some feedback.
Sure.
Let's go around the houses. We'll start with Heather. Heather, do you have any feedback that you could give to Tusar?
I would say just like be more confident and maybe review community users and their implications on sharing and access to things, as well as mobile architecture.
Okay.
But your diagrams looked good, and you had like a good pace, I think, through the original presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nidish, your thoughts?
I would say overall it was good, except a few things about the community licenses, and there are had few more questions which were unanswered going through, especially about the key customer management persona. So most of the bullet points were not addressed under the key customer management persona, and yeah, I think this was good. I mean, I didn't do as better as him even.
Okay, I'll go next. Thank you. So I thought that you were really strong on integration. You seem to know your stuff on integration. I would say think more about how you would orchestrate those integrations and the different protocols involved. You had one situation where you had two systems. One is REST and one is simple web services. And I was trying to get you to pinpoint middleware. And I think Gustavo was trying really hard to get you to talk about middleware as well. You know, because everything seemed very point to begin with. And I think that was really well articulated with the protocols. I just would have said, you know, think about your middleware a bit more. I would definitely suggest just kind of studying more about the license types. Certainly, one of the things that you identified correctly was that it would be a community license, but you actually gave them a community plus license instead of a community license, because you can have cases in community. So you're also just, and obviously the limits as well. We need to all make sure we're on limits, because Gustavo, that would have caught me out as well. Your question about limits, I would have been like, oh, God, shut up.
Yeah,
you identified an excellent Apex sharing requirement. In fact, you identified it twice, and you're very short on time with articulating that. So I would just be mindful of not repeating yourself, because every moment is precious. And we didn't quite look at data migration. And we didn't really look at the testing strategy. So I would have liked to have seen more of that. But overall, it was a good start. Don't beat yourself up too much during the presentation. I know you were during the Q&A, because it's really easy. I could hear it in your voice. You're just like, oh, go away. It's part of the experience. And I thought, you know, you were very brave considering you got picked out the hat first. So thank you.
Yeah, I have some other additional ones also. Just overall, it'll help a lot if you give an introduction to your slides, kind of like what we talked about in the workshop. Give an introduction to your slides quickly, maybe 5 minutes, and then go line by line on your bullets. Start reading from the scenario and telling us how you solve those bullets. Because what I noticed was it's very hard to follow through the requirements, and when you're judging, the judges need to be able to follow and score you on specific requirements, whether you identify them, where you solve for them, etc. And that's hard to do if you are telling too much of a story and not tying it back to a specific requirement on the page. So that one I think is the biggest one. The only other option that, or the only other feedback piece that wasn't mentioned yet was get rid of the words can, could, might out of your vocabulary when you're presenting. Don't give us multiple. Well. Don't give us multiple options. Right? It's I'm recommending that you do this. Like, this is my recommendation. Not you could do this, or well, you can do this. That's very. I mean, also I think Heather mentioned the same thing, right? It's non-committal. Like, it tells us that you are not sure of what your answer is. Yeah.
It's the client. I can tell you're client facing as well from that, because in a client situation, you're going to say you could do that, you could do the other, because so much depends on how much the client is going to pay for it. But in a CTA review board, there is, the money is limitless. You've got a never-ending pot of money. So
right. Okay.
With reason, right? You're not going to recommend Service Cloud for everybody. You want to give the most optimal, right? But yes, yeah. And you can even ask. You can ask a judge during Q&A. You can ask and say, "Is budget an issue here?" And the judge may answer and say, "No, it's not a problem," or they might be snarky and be like, "Well, what do you tell me?" Yeah. We are definitely trying to standardize how judges react and respond, whether questions are leading or not, things like that. So, and then the one final piece is just look up single sign-on, delegated authentication.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And party federation services.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Has anyone not given feedback yet? I don't think Jitendra has.
So yeah, the most of my feedback is already shared. So important feedback I wanted to give is like, be confident, like the same vocabulary you mentioned a lot of time that it can be done or it could be done. So we should say like, as an architect, I would suggest XYZ. Overall, you did very good on system landscape. I really like the delegated authentication option, but you just need to do a little bit better job in explaining them. And yeah, customer community needs to be studied, different licenses. Let me see. I have actually added all my feedbacks here. Integration was covered well. Office-based sharing, no doubt, covered well. Continuous integration was good, but my suggestion would be to have a quick diagram showing like how the continuous integration is going to work, or like you have not mentioned the type of sandboxes. So I would suggest to, when explaining the different type of the instances, sandbox type should be mentioned there. Yeah, that's all from my side.
Yeah. So regarding your comment on delegated authentication, that's actually super suboptimal. So delegated authentication just needs three things. It needs username, password, and IP address. That's what you're sending a delegated authentication server. And then all you're getting back is whether or not they authenticated, yes or no. What in this situation, if it's just ping and that's all, or sorry, if it's just LDAP, you can recommend ping or Okta, whatever you're familiar with. Delegated authentication is very specific.
Got it. Okay.
Anyone else not given any feedback yet? Waruna?
Yeah, I think most of the items are covered. The one thing that I wanted to see is if you can have a slide on the sandboxes on the different environments, that would have helped a lot. Yeah, I think you talked in here and there, but if you had a diagram, that would be very cool. Overall,
sure.
Your diagrams were great.
Yeah.
Easy to read.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. No. I mean, they were great. How did you do on time when you were solutioning?
Yeah. It is just on time. In fact, just 2 minutes ahead.
Okay. That's good.
Yep.
Okay. I think also I would have liked to have heard more from you around the project risks and mitigation strategies. We didn't really dive into that in much detail. And there was a reporting requirement as well that I would have liked to have heard about. It is so hard because especially with this scenario, you've got so much. Like there's only like 1 or 2 pieces in this scorecard that don't apply, and again, it's going through those bullet points piece by piece, as Gustavo said, just making it easy to judge. Because this is the first time I've ever judged, and I found it hard, really hard. And that's not a reflection on you. It's a brand new experience for me as well. But yeah, I think it was an excellent start. You got us all off to a really great start. So thank you so much for taking it on the chin.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your feedback. Thank you.
Okay. Did you enjoy it? No.
I did. In fact, I think it was good. I think I was not sure whether I would be able to complete everything, but at least I got a sense of what was being asked. Right. Yeah, there are some details missing, but I think that's something to work on.
Yeah, and that's what's that is exactly what Q&A is for. To be honest, like if you miss something during your presentation, the job of the judges is to get you those points during Q&A without leading you as much as possible. So that's what they'll say, turn to page 4, read the 3rd bullet point, from the top and tell us how you solve for it. Because that means that we didn't hear a solution from you, or your solution was suboptimal or wrong. And we want you to go over it again.
Hey, Gustavo, I have a question for you. So do you recommend on the paper itself, write the solution against the bullet point?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I did. I did use pen and pencil on the paper, and I wrote this is going to be an outbound message. Trigger, apex sharing, I would write very, very small in the column, just so I can remember it later when I'm going through it. I draw boxes around things that are going to be objects to make sure that I don't miss anything. Things like that. Definitely mark it up.
Okay, thanks.
Another good strategy is if you've got 3 or 4 different highlighters of different colors. So I had a color code for all the integrations, a color code for each entity, a color code for each actor, and where I thought it related to a license, and then and another color for I said integrations, didn't I? For declarative. So anything that sprung out at me as being a programmatic versus declarative. And that just helped. And also at the very beginning, and I have to admit, I nicked this from Matthew Morris. He's done a really excellent plural site on how to diagram, which is well worth looking at. But the way that he starts doing that is he gets a piece of paper and he draws boxes onto it. And just as you're reading through the scenario, this is an example, as you're reading through the scenario, you're basically saying, okay, here are all my entities, here are my systems, and my integrations, my actors. And it just kind of helps you to, because you're going to be jumping around as things come to you anyway. I mean, I was flicking through pages going, right, that's an entity, that's my role hierarchy. And the artifacts were just kind of springing out of nowhere. But it helps you to organize the spaghetti mess in your brain as you read through. I'd highly recommend that plural site course. It's really, really good.
Yeah, the other thing that I did, you mentioned flipping around pages as I was reading. So when you're going to be taking your CTA, you're going to be at a table. So you're going to have some space. So what I do is I rip off a page and put it down flat, and then go on to the next page and rip that off and then put it down right next to it, and then the next one, and keep doing that. So then when I'm done, I have all the pages in front of me with some markings, and I can easily bounce back and forth, and I don't lose the order or anything like that.
Good tip. Okay, thanks everybody. So let's give it. Let's have another week. If you can if you can have it go by yourself, then it will only serve to help you. We can talk at the end about maybe doing another cycle if you want to have another practice, so you can see how the growth's going, which would be good. And Gustavo, thank you so much again for giving up some of your weekend. If you're ever interested in doing it again, we'd love to have you.
Oh yeah, no, I love this stuff. I mean, I may not sound like a fun guy when I'm actually doing Q&A and asking questions, but no, I love this. I love helping people and getting you guys your CTAs.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gustavo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Thank you.
Okay, let's stop now then. Thank you so much, everybody, and good luck for next week. And I'll speak to you same time next Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.